Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the November 2023 edition of the MPF webinar series. Uri, hard to believe it's our 41st since we all had to go home.
Seems like longer, John. Seems like longer.
I thought I was going to say time flies when you're having fun. It seems like we just started yesterday, but okay, for you, it's been agonizingly slow. Okay. All right, I hear you. We're here with Bo Yancey. Bo is our guest speaker today. Smart guy, knows a lot about law firm profitability, and been hanging out in the legal world for 20 plus years at Redwood Analytics and is it LexisNexis, Bo? And now he's setting up a consultancy. Honing in on mid-law, so we've invited him here to join our conversation. Bo, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks. It's great to be here, and yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Well, it's great to have you here. And as we've talked, this is a little bit of an off program given our holiday weekend, Thanksgiving, and as well, Uri and I were partnered up in New York and New Jersey last week with full plates of programming for managing partners in that region, and we decided let's do this program when we're back in the office and less going on. And so we got a great turnout, about 105 registrants today. As always, we'll do our live polling, and when y'all registered, we had you ask some questions, and we'll kind of go through some of those highlights, talk along the way. Feel free to chat in, type in your chats, and don't forget to vote. Vote early, vote often, as we say at the Managing Partner Forum. So I think we're ready to get rolling here, gentlemen. If you're ready,
let's do it.
We're at the top of the hour, and fasten your seatbelts. Let's go. So welcome, everybody, to the MPF webinar for November, where we're going to talk about pricing strategies for the coming year. Timely topic. And a lot going on here in terms of billing practices, rate increases, pricing policy and practices. So we thought we'd bring on this topic here late in the year and give you all a little something to think about as you contemplate your rates and pricing for 2024. We'll introduce our guest speakers shortly. Uri, good to see you. How are things?
Thank you, John. Good to be here. It's always fun to do these webinars, informative, interesting, and looking forward to another good one. Thanks for having me.
Well, my pleasure. Always good to see you. We, as I mentioned, were in New York last week. We did some live polling. We'll show some of those results with our crowd just to give you a peek at what the big city firms are doing. And y'all know me. I run a consultancy, and we run the Managing Partner Forum and been at it for about 20 years. Coming up next year, we're going to be presenting our leadership conference. This is our signature event. This will be our 22nd, and we'll get about 110 managing partners from around the United States and Canada. And if you haven't checked us out, I would encourage you to do so.
Yeah, John, that event, I know you call it your signature event. It really is your signature event. It's really fantastic. I mean, the ability of managing partners from all around the country to talk with each other in that casual, out of the office, for most people, it's out of the state. It's just a great environment for learning, growing in just that totally non-judgmental zone, where people could you speak with people just like you, positions just like you, to hear what's working. And it's just a great environment. You've made something very special there.
Well, thank you, Uri. I appreciate that. We keep growing it, evolving it, based largely on input from our participants. And, check us out. We're doing the workshops. The Dino Rounds are really, really popular. But it is a safe space for leaders of smaller, mid-sized law firms to convene and learn with and from each other. You're not alone. The issues with which you're dealing, and so hopefully we're part of the solution to help you be more effective in the leadership role. Bo, you were at one of our conferences in the early days in Texas, and we continue to chug along. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to attending another one soon. From what I remember, and I do remember it well, it was It was great content. It was very professionally run, and everybody enjoyed themselves. And I look forward to being back soon.
Well, your memory is better than mine. We do a fall symposium kind of offsetting the signature event in October. It's in Chicago, and we'll be hashing through details and presenting that soon. It's going to be an all women's conference. We do our weekly newsletter, try to put good relevant content out there for managing partners, and as well our webinar series. They're all archived on our website, managingpartnerforum.org. We've covered a slew of topics since COVID hit, from PPP loans to the impact of artificial intelligence to leadership during uncertain times. So great body of resources there for managing partners. These are the women this year in Chicago. Our co-chairs, Elise Holtzman. She's been on our faculty for a while. Debbie Foster, who is the CEO at Affinity, co-chaired, all women faculty, all women participants, really great events. So I think we're going to leverage off that and do another all women's leadership conference in 2024. So enough of our shameless plugs, and we'll dive right into today's topic, introduce our guest speaker more formally. We're talking about pricing strategies to improve your firm's profitability in the coming year. Profitability is important, and what kind of strategies, tactics might we be able to implement that are realistic, achievable, and will be impactful in the coming year. We've got 105 managing partners. We're going to review some registrant survey results, highlight some audience polling questions, and as always, we're recorded, and all the handout material will be sent to you shortly after our session today. Our friends at Nine Sale are writing a recap, so this should be a great topic. Want to thank Nine Sale. They do SEO work, search engine optimization work with law firms, and they're partnering with us to help us share this content through various platforms. So thank you, Sarah Brodsky and our friends at Nine Sale. Today's guest speaker is Bo Yancey. He likes to be called Bo, but I insisted on having Emmett in there. And he's got a new consultancy called BY Global. Bo's based out of beautiful Charlottesville, Virginia. So, Bo, why don't you introduce yourself briefly? Tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing at BY Global.
Thanks, John, and really thank you for having me here. I can't stress enough what a nice operation you have and how first class everything that's part of your organization runs. So I'm really happy to be here with both of you. I'm
going to put you on the payroll. No, thank you for the nice words.
Well, I need the business. No, I've been in legal space in software and consulting for just about 20 years. I started with a business called Redwood Analytics that did a lot in advancing profitability analysis for law firms, specifically on the client side, and creating some analytical business models. I've also worked with LexisNexis and a services business called Wilson Allen until very recently. I have spent a lot of time thinking about profitability and the components of profitability, which include pricing and rate setting among the most important pieces of driving and increasing profitability. That's why we're here today, and I'm looking forward to having the discussion with these two gentlemen.
Well, we're looking forward to it as well. So thank you for being here. We're doing the audience polling, firm sizes, and we hit squarely on mid-law. Our audience tends to be the 25 to 150 lawyer firm. So, Bo, in the context of your comments, this is the firm sizes represented today, and that's about typical what we get at these webinars. 99 folks registered. When you did register, I'm going to run through this data real quick, invite Bo and Uri to comment. as to surprises. When you registered, yet we asked you 4 questions, one of which was the billable hour expectation, keyword expectation, your firm has for its income partners. Here are the ranges of annual hours we presented. Uri, what do you think of that?
I mean, the amount of under 1,700, I mean, this is shocking. I mean, frankly, I mean, income partners are usually the differential between an income partner and an equity partner, for example, is that they're supposed to be doing the work and leading the deals. I mean, that's job number one for an income partner. And to have this many doing so few hours, I mean, I think people know it intuitively that it's happened over time, but I mean, it's frankly shocking. It's frankly shocking.
And the key word is expectation. We're not
Right.
talking about actual billable hours, realized. This
Right.
is the expectation we have of our people.
Yes. I do not
Bo,
think they exceed
surprised
expectations.
are you surprised to see this result to that question?
I am mildly surprised. 80% or just under 80% of the respondents had an expectation of 1,800 or fewer. Most of them fewer than that. That is not where we have been in the legal profession. Uri's comments about this particular title doing what they do are spot on. It is probably an accurate reflection of the respondents that utilization has gone down, and we ought to be seeing that based on the things we've read about with respect to supply and demand for legal services.
Of course, utilization can go up if we lower the billable hour expectation.
Yes.
These numbers can be manipulated a little bit. I was stunned, to be frank, when I saw this 1,700 hours. When I got into this business 20 some years ago, I think 2,100 was kind of the norm for this category of timekeeper within the firms. And here we are, really sliding down. Here we asked the same question about your associate attorneys. Bo, let me invite your comment to the expectation we have of associates these days.
Well, so it is higher than income partners on the whole, which I would expect. But again, somewhere north of 80% are 1,900 and fewer hours as an expectation. I would point out, I think that this is the expectation, but not the same thing as what I would guess the target hours are for this title class. I would guess that the target hours are up a little bit higher, 1,900 or 2,000, but the respondents were likely realistic that they weren't going to see 100% utilization, so their expectations are a little bit lower than the target. That's my guess.
Yeah, certainly our word choices here as we present the questions going to influence a bit the answers here. Uri, are you surprised by this we're seeing?
Well, I think just to reiterate a little bit what we said so far, which is this is the expectation. There's expectation, there's target, and then what I hear so much of is people not hitting their targets. I mean, I hear so much as, we'd love for them to hit X amount of hours, but they never do. And well, just another year, let's keep it where it is. So there's definitely this erosion, both of the actual hours as well as this lowering of expectations, sort of a constantly winding down. And it's, I think it's something of note, and something that I think I've shared in the past is in our New York surveys, we have found this over the last 3 years significantly. We found it significantly drops in both associates and partners. Equity partners, not so much. I know we didn't ask it so much. We didn't ask it.
No, I didn't ask the equities here. I asked about the non-owning,
yes,
lawyers
so
mostly.
What we observed is that the owners are not working less the last 3 years. And that's sort of, a point of contention in many firms.
Yeah, I see that dynamic happening.
Yes.
This again, we asked this question over the years, 20 years. We've been asking this type of question, and 1,800 was the right bell curve around 1,800 in our big survey we did in April. So I'm surprised to see this less than 1,700, a third of firms, the expectation. And as you mentioned, is it the floor? Is it required? Is it target? You know, all sorts of words we can use here, and utilization, realization being important KPIs to make sure we're hitting our targets and we can budget accordingly. I think that's interesting data. We continue to see the expectations go down and down and down. You know, work-life balance, remote work. A lot of is there enough work to go around? Oversupply of associates? I don't know, but interesting data to take in. When you're registered, we asked if you achieved meaningful rate increases this year. And almost half of you said, yes, we were successful, 5% or more. And a third of you in that 2 to 4% range. Doesn't look like anyone's seen a decrease in rates this year. Surprises, gentlemen?
Well, it doesn't surprise me because what I have been reading for a while is in line with this. But when you think about the production slides that we've just seen, it doesn't automatically suggest that rate increases are going to follow. So this is the opposite of making it up in volume, right? The volume is declining, and yet rates are going up. Not an easy way to say what that dynamic means, other than perhaps there's an overcapacity issue in many firms as it relates to staffing.
I often suggest to firms, it's not necessarily about the time in, the hours, it's about the value and the money in, regardless of how much time it took you to produce that result. And you know, concepts like value-based billing, we'll talk about some of that at the end of our conversation. Our last polling question when you're registered are your plans for the coming year in terms of rate increases. Uri, this is real consistent with what the New York firms were telling us. Looks like there's some pretty aggressive plans for 2024 on top of 2023. So,
and I think I have a little bit of an explanation going with what Bo was just saying. I had a lot of firms comment to me that, as Bo just said, hours were down, but rates are up, so we're doing fine. I think that's impacting people's decisions for 2024, because let's face it, if you ask them, you say, great news, we're all 100 hours off, but we raised our rates 5%. Guess what? On a 2,000-hour year, we've just made the same amount of money. So I think it's encouraging people to raise 2024. Bo's exactly right.
Interesting. So we can work less and make as much money.
Exactly.
By bumping those rates. What's wrong with that? You know, imagine if we could achieve the hours and hit our realization, utilization goals, how much money we could be making if we could really, you know, focus on hygiene. We'll talk about that. And being realistic in the budgets we're setting forth, the expectations, the rates, and the rest of it. Uri, this is data. We were in New York last week. We had 60 managing partners gathered at the Yale Club, and we used the live polling technology. And so here's what the big city crowd's doing in terms of rate increases in 2023.
Same results.
And plans for the coming year.
Yep. Same increases, got the increases, going to raise the rates again. This is a unique time, I think. Maybe Bo wants to put it into perspective, but I think this is a unique time, John.
I agree.
Don't you think?
And Uri, what struck me is we kind of compared the data from the New York City group and this more national sample size, how it mirrors almost exactly. In terms of rates in this year and in 2024. Bo, any observations on this data before we kind of move into the next phase of our conversation?
Well, it is unique in that this graph here bears out the fact that people are exceptionally bullish about their ability to raise rates. We assume if they're going to do it, they expect to be able to do it, right? So 70% are 4% at a minimum and up from there. That's unusual. That's good news in terms of market dynamics, despite what we talked about with production and what leaders are thinking about the market itself. That is that's interesting.
It's very bullish, and we like it. We love it. Be aggressive. Now is the time. Again, this is New York data on projected rates for the 2024, up 10%, 13% of 1 and 8, and go back to reflect on our sample size of 99 firms across the country. In Canada, very similar, 10%, striving for 10% or more. And so really interesting data to take in. And if you've got some partners who are a little shy about going after rate increases, here's some data that might persuade them that it's okay, and now is the time. Uri, when we were in New York, we had a brilliant faculty, and I think there was overall consensus that this is a unique time for smaller and mid-sized firms to step up, be aggressive. We've got inflation kind of baked into the economy a little bit right now, and we look at Big Law, what they're doing, and boy, there's some exceptional opportunities here for smaller and mid-sized law firms.
Yeah, I mean, we heard over and over, it's the last 2 years, everything has gone up. If you ever felt that you don't want to be, too far ahead of the economy, I mean, everybody's prices have gone up. Why wouldn't you raise yours? Just to be like everyone else. You're not getting ahead of the pack. You're just following everyone. So we heard a lot of that.
Yeah, Bo, we've talked through this in preparation. I think you would agree with us that now's the time to be assertive.
Absolutely. The dynamics seem to bear that out. There's not a consensus, but there's a clear majority, and these times don't come around that often. And so, yes, I agree. It's time to put it out there a little bit.
And we've talked about this in terms of rate setting. Don't wait 3 or 4 years and spring a 20% increase on your clients. You might get a little pushback on that, but just build it in automatically every year. The default is we're going to bump rates. We can make up some exceptions for a practice group or a big client or something like that, but just build this into our DNA and our fee agreements and our standard hourly rate schedules. Bo, talk to us about how important this is.
Yeah, it's really rate setting hygiene or rate setting best practices, and the best way that I think to think about it is to equate it with something like compound interest.
Yes.
It builds upon itself, and if you've got a 0 in there 1 year, it's going to be real hard to get that back. You can't go 3, 3, 3, 0, 6. Very easily. And even if you did, you wouldn't get back to where you were. And so, just like most businesses, right? Most non-commodity businesses, they have this opportunity. They take advantage of this opportunity, and law firms should be doing the same. And the good news is, it seems that they are.
And what's great is they're achieving the increases, at least 2023. And my experience has been anecdotally, the firms that go after it more often than not get it, at least a good part of it. But if you're not asking, you probably won't have many clients coming to you saying, hey, can we pay you more money? So you gotta ask for it. And we'll talk about who sets rates in just a moment. Uri, comments to the importance of annual routine rate setting?
Yeah, I mean, just 2 things. Number one, it just has to be the culture that's what everyone does. And I know we'll get in a minute to who sets the rates exactly, but it has to be the culture. That's what we do. That's normal in professional firms. And Bo's 100% right. You can't make it up. Meaning, just because you did a 0 last year, they're not going to remember this year when you try and get a higher increase. It just doesn't work. And so you'll regret it later, and it's just not good practice.
I think you build this into your engagement letters. You put late fees, into your engagement letters. You're not a banker here. You want to get paid. And if you stiff your landlord, see how that plays. If you stiff your insurance company, see how that plays. I find a lot of law firms just aren't as assertive as they should be in terms of rate setting, billing and collections practices on down the road. This kind of leads us into, we alluded to it, who is doing the rate setting at your firm? And we, audience, poll it. And the results, we asked, is it the firm? Is there a firm-wide rate schedule that we all sort of comply to? It's been approved by an executive committee or something like that. Is it to the office? If we have multiple offices, different markets, do we allow the offices to take the lead in rate setting? What about practice groups? Or do we leave it to the individual attorney? And Bo, I know you wanted to speak to this.
Sure. So with all respect and sensitivity to culture and having to change longstanding traditions, letting the individual attorney set the rates is a bad idea. And there needs to be a centralized, in some form or fashion, process for moving rates along from year to year. You give up too much control, and ultimately profitability itself can be compromised if each individual has that authority. That's not to say that they shouldn't have input, that they shouldn't weigh in on who their clients are, their practices, the dynamics that they see in the market, all those things. But a firm or perhaps a practice group or geography should be in control of these rates going up year over year.
Uri, your thoughts on where rate setting should occur within a firm?
Yeah, I think that the individual attorney is obviously wrong and doesn't usually have enough data to know the overhead and the profitability and all the much information. Bo's right. Let's make sure we get feedback from the attorney. But I think the right place is at the firm level, and here's why. We have a bunch of clients, number of multi-practice clients that have different practice areas with different profitability margins, and as a firm, they're okay with it. Some of the firm is, they do real estate, but the real estate practice is really an accommodation to their corporate practice, for example, and that's okay. So the firm will have the lower rates on the real estate because that's an accommodation to what really feeds the firm. So I think the firm and the firm management, you, the managing partner, you're in the best seat, the best ability with all the information to make those kind of decisions, which, let's face it, that's not easy to say to a partner, Joe's practice is less profitable, and we're going to change his rate, but that's okay for the firm because we as a firm have agreed that fits our mission in serving the real estate community, for example. So that's something that I think I feel passionately about. The firm should be setting that with all that information with the firm priorities, not individuals saying, I want that business, I don't want that business. What's the firm strategy?
Well, I agree with both of you guys. I think it's really important the firm maintain a standard hourly rate schedule. Obviously, input from the individual lawyers, input from the practice groups, input from the various office locations as we look at and develop our standard hourly rate schedule. But I think, it should be a firm-wide type of policy around this. And if you're coming off rate, you need approval from a department head, the executive committee. Someone beyond that individual lawyer has to okay any significant deviation from our standard hourly rate schedule. I find a lot of lawyers are very uncomfortable the conversation with clients around money and the rates and the late bill. Very uncomfortable. It'll upset my client relationship, what have you. So maybe it's a good cop, bad cop, where the individual could say, hey, I'd love to give you a break here and charge you $300 an hour, but my firm's insisting on $400. I I think another interesting question, Uri and Bo, and I invite your comments. Some firms do not waver from their standard hourly rates. We just don't. Other firms will establish a rate schedule anticipating they're going to be given 10% discounts.
Yeah.
And they kind of build that into their pricing. What are your comments on that sort of pricing strategy, Uri?
Yeah, I don't like the latter thing you said, which is
Deals, the one-off deals with a,
setting the rates higher because we
with the
know we're going to
anticipation that we're seeking
discount,
something less at the end of the
and
day.
so we make our client feel special. I just think that's the wrong way to go, and I hear that, but I think that's the wrong way to go. I think it sends the wrong message. I think that when the clients who can pay are on the phone, I think it erodes the lawyer's ability to say, oh no, we get 480, 880, whatever it is, if in fact you really never get that. So I do think aiming high on the wish list, but some of my clients call that the rack rate. There's the rack rate out there. Then there's the rate I give my clients, then there's the rate I actually get, and then there's the actual rate I actually collect. I mean, that's just bad practice. It's like,
and then here
cheating.
are my preferred rates and my premium rates. It can get a little crazy. Why don't we now kind of segue into Bo here and allow him to share some of the slides he put together for us today as we look at pricing and your strategies for the coming year and beyond.
Thanks, John. I'll take a few minutes to walk us through some things. Firstly, I just want to set the stage of what can pricing be. We've been talking about standard rates, and that's absolutely a critical component, but that's not even close to all of it. And the conversation we were just having bears that out. Sometimes we don't even know which standard rate we're talking about, depending on who the firm is. And let's just be clear, when we see situations like that, there was always a reason to do it in the first place, right? And where we often end up is with a bunch of exceptions that don't make sense as a whole, but they made sense at the time for one reason or another. But as it relates to pricing, we have these standard rates, and then the question is, can they get passed through? Can we negotiate that rate or a reasonable amount off that rate that we're happy with for client rates? And then can we operate in a way that we bill and collect at that rate? And it is that collect rate ultimately that we care about, right? And how close is that collect rate to the standard rate? This is the key piece. Usually the collect realization and the bill realization are very, very close. But ultimately, the collect realization is the number and the rate on which we make money and how much. Alternative fee.
What I've observed is that a lot of equity partners, they're not numbers people in most cases. They went to law school, and we talk about utilization, realization, and I think there's a lot of lawyers that aren't clear on what those are and why they're such important metrics. We can bill at $100 an hour, but if we collect 30 days later, $95, there's that realization rate factoring in and trying to bump that up. We're seeing associate realization rates in the mid 80s. That's based upon 1,800 expected. But being realistic and bumping those realization and utilization rates really makes a big difference on profitability.
It's an absolute critical driver of profitability, of the amount of money available to be earned by a firm. And in your example, 95 cents on the dollar collected in 30 days, pretty good.
Pretty good.
A lot of firms are going to take that every time. So, and next slide, please.
All right. You want to talk about AFAs a little bit before we, still the billable hour remains king, everybody, despite all this conversation around AFAs.
In large law, there are many firms who have pricing directors or even pricing groups, and those sorts of people started to get brought in during the 07, 08, 09 period, the ACC Value Challenge that many of you remember, and clients' demand for some relief on rates and some alternative structures, fixed fees, caps, collars, all of those sorts of things. Probably most of our audience has a small amount of work that is done on those things. My quick thoughts on that are to keep in mind that a fixed fee is turning your business model completely upside down. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but you should expect not to be very good at it when you start. It is something that you get better with over time, and you have to use data to be able to do it and do it well. And it's scary because the billable hour is king because it's easy to understand. Clients also understand it very, very well. So oftentimes, and I'm told this by people I know, they'll put together very complex pricing models for a fixed fee arrangement. They'll present it to the client, to their client, and the client will say, well, how about just $10 off of the standard?
Yeah, how about a discounted hourly rate, which as we know is not an alternative fee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that anecdotally many times. At the end of the day, all the client really wants is a discount on our hourly rate. And I think, Bo, if firms are really looking at flat fee, fixed fee, contingency, we're shadow billing it at our standard hourly rates just so we can adjust if we're underselling ourselves, overselling ourselves. If it's fairly routine work, we should get some predictability over time and be able to offer flat fees, fixed fees with more confidence.
John, I see that problem a lot where firms that do fixed fees, and Bo's right, they don't, they often don't know exactly how to price it, although the boutiques tend to do it better, right? If they do immigration law, they know what the process is pretty much. But one problem I see time and time again is that the people working on those files do not accurately put their time in, which leads to that square up if you've done it right is impossible, right? How can I calculate if it was the right price if I did not track the time? And, the lawyers who are busy will say, why should I bother putting in my time? It doesn't really matter. Well, it only matters as much as your next price to charge, which is everything.
Yeah, and garbage in, garbage out, right? If we're sloppy in what we put into the system, we're probably going to get slop coming out. Bo, you talk about client considerations in pricing.
Absolutely. So clients certainly care about what it's going to cost, and their sensitivity is going to be less for based on how critical the matter is to them and what the up or downside could be. But most legal work isn't that. Most legal work is a little bit more routine, and so the cost is more sensitive. But also, a lot of these clients really care about meeting their own budget. They are cost centers to the company that they work for, and cost certainty is very important to them as well. And they don't want surprises any more than any other business does. So that's going to be a big part of how things get priced, and why estimating whether it's hourly or not is becoming more and more important for law firms to do well.
Well, I look at the commodity type practices. We talked about bet the company, where I'm not very price sensitive. If it's bet the company, a transaction, litigation, what have you, I want the best. I'm willing to pay top dollar. We've got the commodity stuff, cost of doing business, general liability, premises, the old insurance defense, workers' comp practices. Clients are setting the fees on that, folks. And if you want to compete in the commodity area, I recommend that firms, if you're going to be competing insurance defense, workers' comp defense, really lean into it and become efficient, embrace artificial intelligence. But I'd encourage firms mid-sized to compete in the important matters, where it's not necessarily commodity, it's important to the business, the transaction, the litigation. Not that the company, because I'm probably going to go to Quinn Emanuel or Wachtell or Kirkland and Ellis, but that important litigation, great grounds on which to compete. And I think mid-law, small law provides a great value proposition compared to big law for the important work that has to be done. Great area to compete, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and we're seeing that, and there'll be a graph that in a couple slides that bears that out. Just a couple points here about what is the groundwork for thinking about pricing. The most important thing about what your price is going to be is what it is now or what it was, and this speaks to the conversation we were having earlier about doing it every year, doing it consistently. You're not going to raise rates 20% just because you're behind and you gave everybody a break for 4 years or 5 years and you want to catch up. It's just not going to happen. So thinking about where you are is important. Thinking about your market based on your practice, geography, your competition, all of these things do matter. And then your own profitability, because profitability at the highest level is 3 things. It's what do you charge? How hard do you work? And what is your expense base? Sometimes that expense base, like now, through no fault of the firm, is going up. And so profitability has to be managed, or if possible, can be managed through these rate increases.
The big shift from bricks and mortar to technology, within the budget. And downsizing the geographic footprint, people working more remotely. But I think, Bo, real profitability is found on the top line,
yes,
rather than trying to squeeze out every nickel you can within your expenses.
You got to be smart, of course, but that isn't a lean firm or to the examples you use. Kirkland and Ellis isn't the most profitable firm because they're the leanest, as one example, or Wachtell or the other one you mentioned. It's because they charge the most and they work really hard too. Example, just a quick example of why this stuff is important and what it looks like. 4 sets of graphs. The blue line in each case is the rate, standard rate on the left, agreed rate, billed rate, collected rate. The orange line is the cost rate. It's consistent across all 4. The gray line is the margin over the minimum acceptable gross margin that the firm has set. And what we can see with the blue line trending downwards is at standard rates, we have a great margin of safety. At work rate, a little off standard, pretty good, but it's clearly lower. By the time we cut just $75 off that standard rate of $700 down to $625, we're right at the margin that we say is acceptable. And if we lose a little between bill and collect, we're below that margin, and profitability is compromised. Just an illustration of why this stuff makes sense.
I call this leakage, between our worked, our collected, and all along the way, we can discount the bill before we send it out. The client might push back, we discount again. Client takes 60 days to pay. All these factors are really eroding our profitability, and really honing in on making sure we're realizing the dollars we anticipate. And you have a couple more slides here, Bo, you wanted to talk to us about.
One more graph and one more slide, but just real quick, this is really the context of mid-law. In each of these sets of graphs, the yellow graph to the right is mid-law. And what we can see starting from left going to right is demand for services in mid-law went up in the rolling 12 months that this Thomson Reuters survey was collected. In the AmLaw 100 and 200, it was essentially flat. The work rates, though, also in mid-law, they went up by the least amount of any of the 3. What does that tell you? Demand's up, work rates were up but less. There's opportunity there for mid-law. much more than any other than the other two segments here. And the fees worked change year over year in terms of the improvement. The work value went up the most in mid-law. So we raised our rates the less, but because demand increased where it really didn't in the other two segments, our fees work change was the most positive. And with our rates having the lowest year over year increase, the opportunity's right there.
And Bo, what do you think is generating this demand
The
for mid-law services?
The recognition that mid-law can do the job, and quite frankly, the exceptionally high rates that we're seeing from some of the biggest firms. And the dynamic
I just gotta throw this out there. I was just, doing a little research on rates and stuff, and here's an article from ALM talking about a case in Richmond, Virginia, where Quinn Emanuel's trying to bill $1,700 an hour, and the judge says, no, those aren't Richmond rates. But the numbers that Big Law is going after. We had a Zoom call, Uri, the other day, guy in Miami, mid-sized firm, talking about $800-900 an hour, as if it's nothing. So, those opportunities are out there. The value is there. The client service, go for it. And your takeaways, Bo?
Sure. So the biggest takeaway is the first bullet, that hygiene is the low-hanging fruit. Here's the best way to say this. Now, I'm not recommending not raising rates, but if your hygiene is bad and you improve it, you can improve your pricing without raising rates, simply by reducing your rejections based on outside counsel compliance guidelines, simply by billing faster, collecting faster, getting time in quicker. Those things matter. Those things are profit drivers. And so many firms, I would guess, have an opportunity right there to do that. As far as the other bullets, we've kind of covered these already. And we talked, there's an advantage here for mid-law, just based a lot on the recognition of the quality of these firms and the fact that there is a rate differential.
I say, you're working the billable hour, you better know how to capture that and train your people. They don't train this in law school. And really ingraining upon your associates the importance of contemporaneous timekeeping practices. Don't wait till the end of the day. Don't wait till the end of the week. You shortchange yourself every time. And lawyers think they can recreate that time. And no, the studies consistently show us you're giving money away. You're leaving money on the table if you're not capturing the time contemporaneously. There are apps for that. And the billing practices, getting those bills out, making sure young lawyers aren't over-lawyering matters, but they have some sensitivity to law firm economics and how much the client might be willing to pay. Really, really basic hygiene. You start paying attention to this stuff, it goes straight to the bottom line. Uri, comments about timekeeping billing practices from your perspective?
If you don't put your time in contemporaneously, same day, I would say while you're working, but at worst case, same day, you are either cheating your clients or cheating your partners. And in most instances, I think you cheat your partners, and it's not acceptable. It is absolutely not acceptable. Creative writing on bills, you try and do them weekly or monthly even, that's bizarre, and you're never going to get it right. Bo mentioned earlier, it's, you don't have to charge your client more. You would just be making more if you just send your bills out on time. You send the collections. It's just simple, important stuff. We saw with COVID, firms really drill down, especially in the beginning. They were looking at bills every day the first couple of weeks and months of COVID.
I remember that. Suddenly we were obsessing on our pre-bills. Yeah.
The problem seemed to have gone away, but I think now it's sort of creeping back where I'm starting to hear, I got those partners who don't put in their bills again, they don't put in their time. And that is just crazy. We have some clients who, and you could Google some of the more creative ways, how to punish people basically for not putting in their time.
Yep.
It's pathetic. It's
Yep.
pathetic that you have to remind your partner. I've seen people penalize partners, penalize them, take away their direct deposit. That's a favorite of mine. I mean, who wants to go have to cash their
You
check?
can't do
Go
that
pick
to
it
your
up.
employees, but you can do that to your equity partners with withhold compensation.
You can only
I
withhold from
find I had a
partners, but
client,
you
you
can
shouldn't have
take
to
away their
bribe
direct
people to get
deposit.
their time in. I had a
It's their
client
job.
years ago, the administrator on Friday afternoons would walk through the office with a stack of crisp hundreds.
Yeah.
And if you got your time in for the week, have a nice weekend, have dinner on us. It worked. People got their time in. You shouldn't have to bribe people to do this, but carrots, sticks. This is really
Mm-hmm.
important. Taking away perks, publishing the list, maybe a little public humiliation. You don't want to be on the bottom of that list month after month after month, but this is really, really important to get right. On the collection side, client portals. Firms having great success with that, where clients can go in, they got a username, password, there are all their documents, they can pay the bill, they can schedule the appointment. Law pay. A lot of our firms on the listservs have had great experience with law pay, taking the credit cards to get your bills paid on the collection side. Profitability. I'm keeping an eye on our time, gentlemen. We have about 10 more minutes. And we asked the profitability, what are you projecting in terms of profitability next year?
Yep.
And here's our audience polling. No one sees it going down, and 60% of it see it seeing a more profitable 2024. Bo,
Yeah,
realistic?
given what we saw with rates being 6% and higher for a big percentage, anything other than this would have been real surprising. So this is in line with everything else we've seen.
Uri, are you
Well,
surprised?
I think rates. I think it's rates, and I think it's also people are feeling the easing of the labor market. They don't project that this year they have to give triple bonuses or 3 times a year bonuses, which obviously goes right to the profitability. So I think people are seeing that ease out a little bit. Their people aren't giving notice every week. They're finding candidates when they need, so there's a little less stress on raising people's salaries and giving those extra bonuses. It's going to go right to the bottom line. I think profitability there for 2024.
Uri, what do we hear about this looming recession? We've got a couple of wars going on. We got an election going on that may impact, the unpredictables here, that may impact and rock the legal services business a bit. Any concerns over those kind of uncertainties?
I have not seen it of late. I feel like it's maybe been gone too long, and now people have put that in the back of their minds more than the front. I think people are still, remember, this year and last year and the year before were record numbers. So we're now talking, these are the highest numbers that any of these firm managers have seen. So them being bullish, continue to be bullish, I'm not surprised.
Okay. Let's shift toward the end here about this monster called artificial intelligence. Because it's here, it's not going away, and law firms are starting to dabble into it. And we've done some webinars on this very topic. We will continue to do more. And we're encouraging law firms to lean into it, learn about it. LexisNexis, Thomson Reuters, IBM Watson, they've all got offerings out there. It's not the wild, wild west like ChatGPT is. They were in the news today, as we all know. But the reliability of the information that's made available to us through these artificial intelligence resources. We're going to ask a polling question here as to whether or not your firm is considering the impact of artificial intelligence on its future pricing models, billing practices. This is a big, big uptick from when we asked this question just a couple of months ago. Bo, talk to us about artificial intelligence, what guidance you might offer a managing partner of a mid-sized law firm?
I would think about it in a couple ways. I would want to listen to the vendors like TR and Lexus about what they are putting into their products and how it works for my firm. I go back to the use case every single time. AI is a buzzword unless it solves a specific problem. But it is big enough that I think managing partners should educate themselves about what their vendors and suppliers are doing with AI, because there is absolutely opportunity there. And there's opportunity on both the practice side as well as the business side in terms of figuring out how to price for things like fixed fees and how to code matters and submatter information, phase tasks, et cetera. And certainly on the automation side with the actual practice of law.
I think anytime there's disruption, it creates opportunities. If you're on top of it, paying attention, trying to find your lane. But if your head's buried in the sand, you're going to get passed by. This is our New York crowd weighing in on, this is last week, and we phrased the question slightly differently to ask about AFAs, but firms are starting to pay attention, and this is good to see. This is a graph from Goldman Sachs that looks at the major components of the economy, the various industries. We've got building construction over here on the far left. Hard to go online and create a building, but look over here on the right side, the sectors of the economy projected to be impacted employment-wise by artificial intelligence. There's legal. And, machines replacing humans when it comes to document review, document production. It's starting to happen. Don't be afraid. Lean in. Seize the day is our guidance. Uri, you want to talk to us a little bit about this?
Yeah, it's interesting. On AI, I hear a lot, I'm in the insurance risk management business. I hear a lot of, oh, don't go near there. That's too dangerous. It's too risky. And I think that's overblown, and I think that's the mistake, because I think it'll be a time, and I don't think it's going to be too long into the future, where instead of clients, saying, hey, lawyers, go a little slow on this, it's going to be the opposite. It's going to just flip, and very quickly, where you're going to be required to use AI, or else you're not going to be affordable for your clients. Our clients are just going to say, look, I'm just simply not going to pay. Everybody knows doc review. It's an easy example. I'm just not going to pay $4.50 an hour for doc review, to flag names, because
for
your competitor,
days of hours of document review, where some of these tools can do it in seconds.
Correct. And I'm not going to pay for it. So if you're left with that cost structure of doc reviewers, you're not going to be able to bill to your clients, and that's going to be a huge drag on your firm, your profitability, but everything in your firm, if you're out of whack to what the client's demanding. Yeah. So be aware, be up there, and be listening. I think Bo's, has good advice. Listen to your vendors, what technologies are available. As they become more and more available, learn. John, we did a webinar on this. I know it's archived. Some firms are really leaning in and figuring out, being the creative, so that they can find those efficiencies. And that's the way to go.
Training their people how to use these tools, putting policy in place that kind of protects your firm in case somebody does something stupid. Yeah. And here's the old Rogers adoption curve, and we all know lawyers don't like risk. They don't like change. So they're going to wait and hold out, and only when everybody else is in the pool am I willing to jump in. And where, Bo, on this adoption curve, do you think most mid-sized firms should be trying to kind of put themselves? Among the early adopters, early majority, or should we wait and follow the herd?
No, I don't think you should wait. I think the early majority is where where I think most folks would be comfortable. You know, the other side of educating yourself and even understanding what the use case would be is my firm ready to implement any of this stuff, right? Or is it going to throw things into chaos? And that's really based on who the firm is and what the problem is that is trying to be solved. I think education is paramount. And so, you know, if you're doing that well, that early adopt majority, you know, within one standard deviation of the median is where I would likely want to be.
We're talking about like an actuary there, a statistician, Bo. I like it. I encourage firms to be in the front half of the early majority. Get ahead of your competitors. The pace of change is blindly fast, and the longer you wait, the more challenging it will be to get caught up. And we can look at examples of technology, you know, just the internet, iPhones, the old fax machines. And do you want to be the last firm in town to get a fax machine, or the first firm in town to get a fax machine? I mean, you know, there are advantages to being first. Nobody wants to stumble, but, you know, get ahead of your competitors is our guidance. Our last little section here speaks to the information we all want, which is what our competitors are charging within our markets for our various practice areas. And where do I go to sense where our competition is? This is a little list I put together, but there are other sources of information. Some of this stuff's really expensive. Some of it's free. But Bo, talk to us about where you think we can source some of this data on competing law firms and how they're pricing and charging for services.
Well, it goes without saying that the Managing Partner Forum leadership surveys are at the top of the list, without question.
Without question.
You know, but everyone already knew that. So beyond that, you know, Peer Monitor is a great product. It's probably skewed a little bit towards the AmLaw 200. The ALM stuff is rich, but also for the rich. It's pretty darn expensive.
It is expensive.
And you know, I won't go through all of these. I think, you know, sometimes your accounting system vendors have benchmarking programs that they could help with. And there's a lot of anecdotal information out there, but this is a pretty solid list of places to look.
The firms are, you know, a little, you know, antitrust. If we're talking about compensation and rates and stuff, there's a sensitivity around that. The ALA chapters, I want to pull that one out there. There's several, 119, I believe, last time I checked, ALA chapters all over the United States, Canada, and some foreign countries. And these administrators, your executive directors, your directors of administration, are a tight group. And they'll share privately, sometimes not so privately, this information. That's a great resource. There's a couple of markets where they're managing partner groups. I think of Miami managing Florida Association of Managing Partners, they call it. It's about 25 firms, mid-size, Miami, Fort Lauderdale. They get together every quarter, share information, but there's certain things they do not talk about with the group. But I think there's a lot of conversations going on among friendly competition in town. Your associates might have a handle on some of things. And when I was at the Gunster firm in Florida, we rarely bid on public work. We, you know, government work, not going to pay the rates we want. But there was one opportunity we submitted a proposal, as did all the other major firms in Florida, Greenberg, Holland and Knight, Ackerman, all submitted their proposals and pricing. And through, you know, government and the sunshine laws, I was able to get my hands on all those proposals and share them with our team. They found that information to be very insightful. So when we send our follow-up, we're going to ask you all if you've got sources of competitive intelligence that you think might be helpful to our group, and I'm going to kind of put together a master list. I get the question frequently from a managing partner, John, where do I find data for what firms are charging a third-year real estate lawyer in Minneapolis? It's like, I don't know. So, Uri, anything you think? You do some competitive
Yeah,
stuff. I know in New York, New Jersey
yeah, yeah.
might
So
be helpful to firms in that region.
yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is always, in the Citibank survey, for example, is that going to be skewed towards your kind of clients or not? And often not. We do a regional survey in New York and New Jersey with a lot of information, people like that. I also have just one other thing to add to the list, which is many of you have really good relationships with your clients and your general counsels in particular. They'll tell you if you are close with them, they'll tell you, sometimes they'll tell you you're too expensive and you say, by how much? And you might know if they're close enough with you, I think they will tell you in terms of, with your peers for the same kind of work. I think that's an extra source.
I think that's a great idea. Back to the Gunster firm, we'd go out, call on the firm's top clients, and among the questions we would ask is, what other firms are you using in Florida? And are you happy with their services? How do we compare?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yeah.
clients will start talking to you. You guys are on the high side, but man, the value, the attention, the service is incredible, and we're willing to pay that premium fee. It's interesting what you learn when you sit down and have a nice open conversation with your clients about stuff like this. So we're here to be a resource. We're going to be doing more programming around artificial intelligence. Uh, want your feedback on today's program. Really, really important to us. So when we part ways, you'll be directed to an online survey, and it'll only take you 2 minutes to complete. We'll send you an on-demand recording, the handout materials. Bo's got an article we're going to put in there. Nine Sales going to write up a recap for us. And our final of the webinar of the year will be on December 20th. And details will be announced in the coming days to sign up for that puppy. So that's it for today's program. Thank you, Bo Yancey and Uri Gutfreund, and happy Thanksgiving to you and your families. We're all available if you want to reach out, carry on the conversation. That's our contact information. So please reach out to us if we can assist. Bo, anything for the good of the order before we part ways and go have some turkey?
I enjoyed being with the two of you, and I hope the audience found this informative. This was a lot of fun, and I hope to be back soon. Thank you for having me.
Well, Bo, thank you. Appreciate your input and perspective on this. And Uri, last words here.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and thank you for being with us. Have a
Take
great
care.
afternoon.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.